And welcome to the Answers 42 podcast. I am your host, as always, Dan Wetstein, the second, because there's three of us, so we do have to differentiate. But I do apologize again. Like I said the last pod, I don't have AC. So if I do start looking sweaty with my fat self, I apologize. I'm doing the best I can, but I'm toughing it through for you. Let's go ahead and let's jump into the sports talk that we got going on today. We're going to be covering, as always, the major headlines across at least three, if not four, of the major sports that are going on here in America. We are going to go nationally. This is not a niche podcast. We're going to go ahead and broaden the strokes, as we always do here on The Answer is 42, because The Answer is 42 is the answer to everything. We can't just keep it to one thing, right? So let's go ahead and get in. First up, we got the NBA Finals recap. Y'all should have known this is coming. Not only are the Nuggets my team, they did just win it. The NBA Finals just happened, so we definitely have to talk about it. So, first off, how do you put Jokic's postseason run in perspective? The only way to do so is to acknowledge that this man had one of, if not the most dominant postseason runs we have ever seen. The man was the first person to have 500 points, 250 rebounds, and 100 assists in the same postseason. And that's not where he stopped, y'all. That's just the bare minimum of the lowest that you could go to make him the only person to have ever done those three things at once. He actually ended up with over 600 points, almost 300 rebounds, and over 120 assists in just 4 rounds. Like he didn't go into the play-in games. He didn't get the extra games like Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and the Heat and the Lakers and them all got, and he still outproduced every single one of them, including the Heat that again had 2 extra play-in games, and none of them even sniffed those numbers in any of those categories, let alone all 3. It's absolutely insane what we have seen from Jokic, and people need to start respecting and understanding the greatness that they are seeing. He is one of the best all time. It is no longer that he is just one of the best currently in the league. He is one of the best to have ever dribbled a basketball. And I don't care that you want to bring up your little subtleties about he's not a rim protector or whatever. It's been proven through the numbers that no, he doesn't block shots the way that Shaq and Mutombo and those guys did, but he affects things on the defensive end in a completely different way with the steals, the fast hands, the always being in the best position possible. And yes, does he allow some shots to go through that maybe an Embiid or a Giannis might have blocked? Yes, he has. But when you factor in everything and you're not just being an obtuse jerk off that's trying to find whatever little tidbit you can hold on to so that way you can keep your Jokic hate as close to your heart as possible, he is one of the better defenders in the league overall. Again, does he block shots? Is he an old school rim protector? No, but it's so funny to me that the people making these arguments about, oh, he's not an old fashioned rim protector are the same people that have been talking about how, oh, old fashioned rim protectors are no longer needed in the NBA. So which one is it, people? Which one? You can't have it both ways. You can't have the cake and eat it too. It's either you have the cake or you eat it. I need y'all to make a decision, and please, for everybody's sake, sit down and shut up. Because it's been the whole hot take industry at this point has been completely just body slammed over and over and over. A lot like Brock Lesnar slamming John Cena at WrestleMania over and over again. That is what the Nuggets and Heats did to the hot take industry, to the Nick Wrights, to the Stephen A. Smiths, to the Kendrick Perkins. They have absolutely taken every one of y'all to the cleaners. And instead of just going out, like, unlike, I will give Nick Wright some credit. I mean, he still needs to sit down and shut up and never say another thing about basketball ever again, let alone when talking about the Nuggets. But he at least went out on Twitter and tried to apologize, as backhanded as it was, for being as ignorant as he has been when it comes to talking about the Nuggets, but always put in the case, some of us had to see it. No, you jerk. You just thought that because you could ride the coattails of LeBron James for so long and get things right every once in a while because LeBron James was just great enough to make you right in some situations, does not give you any type of gravitas to be like, oh, I have to see it, otherwise they're not good. No, Nick, Perk, all of you, you are not that important. None of you are. I'm not. None of you are that important that you have to see it to believe it. You're not that big of a pundit. You are not that good at your job. You are not Nostradamus. You rarely get things right. You are literally paid to be a troll. Just like Mr. Barry out there on Twitter that blocked me today because he's a snowflake. That is all you are. You are a troll that likes to use that troll mentality as an easy out for when you make terrible takes. It's just, oh, hey, I'm a troll. Why did you take me serious? Because you were being serious, bro. That's why we took you serious. You don't get to backtrack when hindsight's 2020 and be like, oh, I was just, saying those things because I hadn't seen it, or whatever excuse you have. At least be a man, and a man enough to hold true to what it is you say. Don't come backtracking after the fact when you're made a fool and then try and tell everybody else they're a fool for believing you because you're a troll. No, dude, sit down, shut up, never speak again. There is no irony in any of your tweets. I need y'all to really look up the word irony. People throw that word around way, way too easily. That nothing about being a troll is ironic. Being a troll is simply that. You are trying to be as insufferable and terrible as a person as you possibly can be to get likes, clicks, and views. I don't respect that. I will never respect. I do not understand the cottage industry of trolls. Trolls are simply douchebags that are enabled by other douchebags that don't like accountability. That is all that the whole troll economy is about. It is about a bunch of people that hate being held accountable, so they go around and say terrible things and then be like, haha, just kidding. Like, no, you weren't, bro. You were throwing crap against the wall. When it sticks, you will stand behind it 100%. But once you get drugged, all of a sudden it's, woe is me. Why are you being so mean? I'm just a troll. I'm just a terrible human being that does nothing but have an entire business model that causes me to be as insufferable of a turd as possible. Why would you ever get mad at me? Why would you ever take anything I say seriously? Because, dude, when it's convenient, it's serious. When you're wrong and when you're drugged, all of a sudden you're a troll. No, bro, that just means you don't like accountability and you want to try and have an easy out when you have terrible takes. Stop it. Get out of the way. Because now real journalism needs to come back. People that actually care, that give a damn about the sport that they're talking about, that want to bring you actual stories and not just enrage you. We want to enrich you. So hopefully the NBA finals are a way to put things in perspective for the hot take industry, that maybe they should tone it down a little bit. I doubt it. Those people are absolutely terrible human beings to sort of think that they would hold themselves accountable when they refuse to be held accountable themselves. I highly doubt it, but this is the world we live in. We unfortunately have a lot of people that don't like to be held accountable, so they gravitate towards them. And you get the guys like Barry who make a living off being a terrible human being. But let's get back to the basketball and Jokic and which team is most likely to return. That is obviously the Nuggets. I know Heat fans that y'all are so far up your Heat culture that you can't see left or right. All you can see is dead center to the boo boo that's about to smack you in the face. You are that far up your Heat culture. You really believe that this team, as built, can come back. They were absolutely exposed in the finals by the Nuggets being bigger, stronger, meaner athletes. Aaron Gordon took over at times in the ilk that you were like, okay, that's why he was a top 10 pick. That's why he was a lottery pick. He showed that if you just bully Miami, they're going to wear down. It's something that Boston should have learned a lot quicker than game 4. And they probably would have been the ones in the finals as opposed to the Heat. But to think that this iteration of the Heat is just automatically going to come back. I love Spoelstra. I love Butler. I love Bam. But Butler and Bam are not enough. Even my guy Italy Jet earlier said over and over, they need a third star, whether that's Damian Lillard, etc. They need something else. And I really think they need more size than anything. I think Damian Lillard would be an awesome addition to any team. And I think him and Butler, with him being able to go out there and take over things offensively in the way that he can, would be a great boon to Miami. They need size. My goodness, do they need size? Bam was bullied most of the finals. And it wasn't just that he was just bullied by Jokic, the biggest guy on the court. He was bullied by Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon. The man was just straight bodied by anybody that had just a modicum of strength. The only people he could really bully around were the smaller guys on the Nuggets roster, like Jamal Murray and Bruce Brown, etc. There's just not enough heft in that backcourt for the Heat. They have to do something. So with that being the case, it's got to be the Nuggets. Out of these two teams, at least, there's other teams you can talk about. We can have that debate later. But out of these two teams, it has to be the Nuggets. They have a 2-time MVP who is just 28 years old. And he's the oldest starter they got. That's the oldest starter. And every one of their starters is locked up for at least the next 2 years. The shortest contract is KCP, who got a 3-year deal. This was the first, so he's got 2 years left. Jokic and Murray are both locked up on a max and supermax contract, respectively. You have Aaron Gordon, who was locked up on a multi-year $90 million extension just a year and a half ago. You have Michael Porter Jr., same thing, multi-year $90 million contract. This team is set up not only to have the success they had just this week, but to have success for years to come. To sit here and say that the Heat have a better chance than the Nuggets to repeat, you have to be a homer. You have to be somebody that does not know basketball and does not know what it takes to get to the pinnacle of your sport. This team, the Nuggets, they have it. The one thing they did not have entering this postseason seemed to be a killer instinct in the playoffs. They have definitely developed that after sweeping the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals and then taking out the Heat in just 5 games, and really should have been a sweep if it wasn't for the fact that the Nuggets just did not show up whatsoever on their court in game 2. The fact that the Nuggets did not show up that game is the only reason that the Miami Heat were not swept. And again, that's not a dig at the Heat. I love Jimmy. I love Bam. They are just way too small, way too meek when it comes, especially in the offensive side. They could not, in any capacity for a consistent period of time, do anything in the paint as long as the Nuggets had their starters on the court. There was a couple of times once they got the Nuggets kind of went to their small ball lineup with Jeff Green and Bruce Brown and KCP and Jamal Murray all out on the court at the same time, and Christian Brown all at the court at the same time. They got a little bullied in the paint, and Malone saw that, and he only deployed that. He never deployed that same lineup again after game 3, where that allowed that lineup is what allowed Miami to get back into game 3 before he put his starters back out there. Then they built the 15-point lead that got him the rout there in Miami in game 3. So the fact that Miami is just that weak inside is going to be a huge area of improvement that's needed to be done by Miami if they want to make a repeat and not just get there. Like they've got there 2 out of the last 4 years. Yes, can't take that away from them. They've also lost in the finals 2 out of 4 years. I think the max that you're going to get out of this roster as it is a finals appearance. This team cannot win a finals championship, not as currently constructed. So we'll see what they do in the offseason. They got some chances to make some improvements, but we'll see what they're actually able to do. And the next narrative that I want to jump on is, did the Nuggets have as easy of a road as people make it out to be? When you look at just the seeds, yes, it looks that way. They played a couple 8 seeds, played a 7 seed, played a 4 seed. Duh. That's what having the number 1 seed gets you. The whole narrative of, oh, the 1 seed had the easiest path to the playoffs or to the finals. Duh, dummy. Duh. Just duh. You're an idiot. If you're making that argument, you are a complete and absolute idiot. Duh. And so, yes, they played a couple 8 seeds. They played a 7 seed and a 4 seed. Guess what? Those 8 seeds, 7 seeds, and 4 seeds were obviously they were better teams than those other seeded teams. Just because their seed was higher doesn't mean they would have made it more difficult for the Nuggets. That makes no sense. If the 8 seed beat the 1 seed, the 8 seed's better than the 1 seed. Period. That's just how it works. That's how sports work. The better team wins. Whether it's the better team that night, the better team that series, or the better team that season, the better team wins. Period. So to sit here and make it sound like, oh, the Nuggets wouldn't have made it there if they had to play the 2 seed, the 1 seed, the 3. No, that's not the case, because they beat the teams that beat those teams. So they obviously beat the better team. It's not nearly as easy. And this is the NBA, okay, guys? This is not March Madness. This is not North Carolina going up against Eastern Carolina State Grambling of New York It is not the same thing. This is the NBA. Every team's good. Any given day, any NBA team can beat any NBA team because, say it with me, they're NBA players. It's not complicated, guys. It's just like in the NFL. It's just like in Major League Baseball. Professional sports are on a different level than any other level of any sport, no matter what sport you're talking about. There's a reason that NFL teams don't play college teams. It's not just because NFL teams get paid and college don't, which now that's not true completely, but still, you get my point. It's because of the level of competition. There's levels to this stuff. There's reasons that Major League Baseball has the minor league system. Because yes, every once in a while, you run into a Shohei Ohtani, you run into a Barry Bonds, you run into a King Griffey Jr. that is ready at 18, 19 years old to be in the pros. But the 99% of the kids aren't. 99% of kids are not ready to go from high school to the pros. There's a 1 in a million. There's exceptions to every rule, yes, but the majority's not. And again, that is why pros don't play amateurs. And there's a reason that we have a designation that is pros, and then there's a designation for amateurs. If everybody was a pro, there wouldn't be a separate name for them. So to sit here and act like just because the Nuggets played a bunch of lower seeds makes their path to the championship anything less than any other team that has ever played and went and won a championship, you are just simply a hater that does not want to admit that this dusty little cow town has the best team in basketball. And there's not another team that's even close at this point. The Nuggets held first place longer than any other team in either conference. They dominated the postseason. They lost only 4 games in the entire postseason, making them one of only a handful of teams that won a championship by losing no more than 4 games. This team did their job, not just in the regular season, but the postseason as well. And they got a well-earned and must be respected NBA championship. If you think anything otherwise, that the Nuggets are a legit champion and have a legit ring, you are simply a terrible human that just wants to be obtuse for simply being obtuse. So let's go ahead and move on from the finals. I've said my piece. I've gotten my say in. Let's talk about NBA draft that's coming up just in exactly a week. It's next Thursday. We will be live that day as well. I don't know if we're going to be doing draft day coverage, but we'll be doing something on that day. So first up, the biggest buzz that seems to be going around outside of the fact that Wembanyama's going first, that's just what's going to happen, is the Pelican. There's been talk about the Pelicans wanting to trade Zion possibly to move all the way up to number 2 or number 3. So that way they can go ahead and pick up Scoot Henderson, the shooting guard that's in the draft. Looks really good. I like Scoot. I think he's going to be a top flight scorer and has the frame and the potential to be a top flight 2-way player and not just an offensive threat. I do believe he has the want to on the defensive end to do some things, and he's healthier and he doesn't have the injury issues or fears. I mean, there's obviously injury issues and fears with every player in every sport, but he doesn't carry the frame that Zion does and carry the risk that I talked about when it was him and Ja. Now, I was always a Ja guy, but that was also before he did all this idiocy on Instagram. I hope he gets together because I love Ja, and I do believe he's shown to be the better player in that draft. And I think New Orleans, even with the gun issues that have plagued Ja, probably would rather have that than what they've dealt with Zion, which is the fact they just can't keep him on the court. So, in my opinion, should the Pelicans trade Zion for the number 2 or 3 pick and get a guy like a Scoot Henderson to replace him? Honestly, at this point, it seems like there's a bit of a toxicity with Zion. If any of y'all that follow him know about the whole ex-retired porn star thing that's been going on with Twitter, where she's been claiming all of these things about him, he hasn't responded. So I don't want to go too far into those weeds because I don't know what is going on with that. I don't know if anything she's saying is true because there's been nobody to corroborate. She's put up screenshots of supposed text messages, but we all know how easily those things can be doctored. So until I have any other further proof, I'm not going to go farther down that rabbit hole than absolutely necessary. But there seems to be some things working off the court that are working against him as well as the fact that he just can't stay on the court. So yes, if I am New Orleans and I have the ability to get out from underneath that supermax contract that they just gave him, and I can go out and get a top 3 pick to get the guy I want that I feel will be that game changer that Zion was supposed to be, I'm going to do it. As a GM, take all the heart and feels out of it that you might have for it. I'm getting rid of Zion in a heartbeat. If so, whatever the package is that it takes, as long as it's going to get me into the top 3 to get my guy, the guy I want, I'm going to take it. Now, I'm just not going to take anything from anybody because Zion is still has the potential to be a world-beating athlete. He has the potential, if he can stay on the court, to be something we've never seen before in the ilk of a Jokic or LeBron James or Michael Jordan. He has that type of ability as a baller, but you got to stay. The best ability is availability, and he just hasn't had it. So yes, if Pelicans get a viable offer that gets them into the top 3 that will guarantee them their guy, if Scoot Henderson is their guy or whoever it is, all the assumptions are Scoot Henderson, but hey, those could be smoke screens. It might be another guy. Who knows? But if it gets you up to where you need to be to get your guy, do it. Don't worry about anything else. If you truly believe in that player, get rid of the headache. Go get yourself a rookie and see what he can do with the likes of Brandon Ingram and the rest of that roster that they have built in New Orleans after that Anthony Davis trade. I think they are one of the few teams that has taken the trade of a superstar and made the most of it. I think you're going to see a little bit of that happening in Houston with the picks and things that they've gotten. I think they've done a really good job with what they've done and what they will do, especially if they end up getting James Harden back. That stuff is all craziness, but it could happen. So good on New Orleans for what they did with the Anthony Davis trade. If they can turn around and do another one, like if they can turn this kind of a trade with Zion into what they did with Anthony Davis, we might be talking about the new power of the Eastern Conference within the next year to 2 years. If they are just able to just simply do what they did with the Anthony Davis trade with Zion, they will be set for at least the next decade. Next up is, will Wembanyama live up to the hype? That's really tough. And I'm not saying it because I don't think he will be a very good or even great player. I do think he will. But when you're hyped, it's a lot like what happened to LeBron James when he came out. It's like, how do you live up to that, to those expectations? How do you live up to that hype? Obviously, LeBron was able to, but we also have so many examples of players that don't. I think that Wembanyama might be a little bit different than a lot of those guys in the fact that he's a little bit more grounded. It seems like European players tend to be a little less crazy than American-born players. Like, I don't think we're going to see Wembanyama pop up on Instagram with guns in a strip club the way that we have with Ja, because also at the same time in France, boobies aren't taboo. So, like, they're used to it. So I've never seen a European player ever get caught up with some craziness at a strip club unless they're there with an American player. Because it's just like, to them, it's just like, y'all pay for this. Like, we can just go to the beach and have all of this in France and all those things. So they always tend to be a bit more calm. So I think he has a better chance than most to live up to the hype. But when you're hyped up to this level, it's really, really difficult, even if you are really, really good, to live up to that hype. So will he live up to the hype? I don't believe so, because it's just an impossible amount of hype to live up to. But do I think he will be a legit number one overall pick? That I do. So Wembanyama, ignore all the noise, go out there, ball out, boy, and do your thing. I think you're going to be great in the league. Let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's move from NBA on over to the NFL. We have today's biggest topic for me is, why the disrespect for running backs? A lot of people have seen Dalvin Cook getting released. There's been a lot of talk about Derrick Henry getting traded because the Titans won out of that contract with him hitting over 30. You have Saquon Barkley's fight up in New York with the franchise tag and him wanting to get paid. You got Josh Jacobs over in Las Vegas that's sending out cryptic tweets talking about, I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for the next ones, talking about he's not, essentially saying that he's not just going to take a deal to take a deal, that they're going to have to pay him because he wants to set the market for the next set of running backs. The problem is I believe that the NFL has subscribed to my mentality. You don't pay running backs. You just don't. I know that sounds terrible, but it's also why I've told people a million times, don't let your babies grow up to be running backs. It's going to turn out terribly. And why do we say that? Why does everybody say that running backs are over the hill at the age of 30? That's usually the prime of most people's lives, is somewhere between 30 and 32 when it comes to their professional life. Why is it that running backs are essentially old men in the NFL at that point? Well, the numbers bear it out. When you look at the numbers, when running backs are 23 or younger, they average around 1,064 yards, about 4.4 yards per carry and about 8 touchdowns a year, with a total scrimmage yards of roughly about 1,330 yards, and about 10 total touchdowns. Then you go to 24, that goes up a little bit. You got 1187 in yards, rushing yards total, 4.44 yards per carry, 8.5 touchdowns, over 1,500 scrimmage yards, and right around the 10 touchdowns as well. Then you go to 25. That's about the peak. That's where most running backs peak out. They average 1,306 yards, 4.39 yards per carry. See that per carry is going down. The yards go up, but that's because of extra usage. Then you have them at just under 10 rushing touchdowns, almost 1,700 total scrimmage yards, and 11 total touchdowns. Those are the averages between 23 and 25. Then you go into the 26 to 27 age range. That's when everything starts to slip. From 26 to 27, rushing yards goes down to about just under 1,300. Your yards per carry goes down to 4.3. Touchdowns goes to just over 9. Total yards goes to just over 1,600, and total touchdowns right about 10 and a half. Then stuff starts really falling off a cliff right at 28, 29. The running backs over the last, and just to give you all breath, these numbers are running backs over the last 30 years. These are averages per birth year, not year in the league. These aren't like, rookie numbers, because not everybody has their first year at 23 in the league as a rookie. Some are younger, some are older. So these are just averages over the last 30 years. So back at 28, 29, this is again where everything starts falling off a cliff. You're down to less than 1,200 yards total, just over 4 yards per carry at 4.26. You're at less than 9 rushing touchdowns. You drop below 1,500 total yards and under 10 total touchdowns. Then 30 keeps going down. You're at just barely 1,000 yards average. That's 1,000.2 yards. A 4.15 average, 6.56 touchdowns, 1,269 total yards, and just under 8 total touchdowns at 7.64. Then when you hit 31, it's absolutely completely off the cliff. At 31, the average running back had 858 yards, 4.16 yards per carry, 5.72 touchdowns, 1,101 total scrimmage yards. That's rushing and receiving, and 6.59 total touchdowns. Then when you go to 32, it gets even worse. 682, 380, 3.86, 5 touchdowns, 911 total yards, 5.81 touchdowns. And then at 33 plus, again, just on and on. And these are averages. Obviously, you have the occasional Curtis Martin or Adrian Peterson, or maybe even Derrick Henry at this point. He just hit over 30 and just had over 1,200 yards last season. There are some exceptions to the rule, but as you see, on average, just from pure usage, the odometer reading, for lack of a better phrase, on a running back to know when they're over the hill is 2,500 touches. Almost every running back that has ever hit 2,500 touches after that falls off a cliff. Essentially every single one. You have Ezekiel, like for example, Ezekiel Elliott just hit the 2,500 mark last season before last, and you saw exactly how terrible he was last season. There's something about that 2,500 mark that once a running back hits it, the wheels fall off, plain and simple. So again, why would you pay a running back once they hit 30? It just doesn't make sense at this point. All of the data shows that once you hit 30, because they're getting beat down, that's why it happens. 2,500 car wrecks is how you can best describe those 2,500 carries. Is they had 2,500 car wrecks. That's going to wear down anybody. And that's just how the cookie crumbles with running backs. So what is a fair way to compensate running backs that teams could stomach, that I could stomach? To me, it's paying the running back early. If you get a running back that out the first 2 years are absolutely great, give him the contract then. Let him spend the bulk of his career, the bulk of those 2,500 carries, while getting paid. That's really the only compromise I see being able to be stomached, because you never pay for past performance on a contract in any sport, let alone in the NFL. It's all about what are you going to do for me in the future. So this is the best way I've been able to figure out, is just give them a contract early. It, it gets them paid. It gets them that generational wealth. It secures them and their family and their kids and their grandkids and great grandkids and all that stuff. And that way, when you do ship them off or cut them later on, there's no moral high ground for people to have. You've already paid them. They've got their money, and now they're moving on somewhere else and probably going to get paid somewhere else. And the ilk of like what Dalvin Cook's going to end up happening. I know they're talking about him getting like 10 million a year. He'll probably get somewhere around there if he holds out long enough, especially if he gets into training camp and running backs start going down and a team gets desperate. The fact that Dalvin Cook spent he's the only running back to have over 1,000 yards rushing for the last 4 consecutive seasons. And yet he is a free agent. That tells you all you need to know. And it's from the team that drafted him. That's all that you need to know about how the NFL views running backs and paying them anywhere near being 30. You saw it happen with Melvin Gordon in San Diego and then in LA after they moved to LA. He got pushed off as a former first rounder, and he doesn't have nearly the pedigree that a Dalvin Cook has. So will this change? Will the disrespect ever end? I don't see it. It's only going to get worse as this becomes a more and more pass heavy NFL and game. There's less injuries in the passing game than the running game. It's kind of why the NFL has really kind of pushed it that way. You don't have those big uglies in the middle getting scrummy with this little 5'11" running back like a Tony Pollard or something like that allows them to just break them in the way that they do now. So again, will the disrespect end? No, it's only going to get worse. Running backs sitting here trying to think that they're going to make the change this offseason. I don't see it happening. I don't see Saquon and Jacobs and Cook being able to switch things around in any meaningful way. So that's my take on the running backs and the disrespect. Let's go ahead and move on to NFL trade and free agency rumors. We're just speaking about Dalvin Cook. There's also big names like DeAndre Hopkins, as we also mentioned, Ezekiel Elliott out there. Where will these guys land? For me, with Dalvin Cook, I see it as the possibility of 2 places right now. If he holds out and gets to training camp and some other starters start going down, the options will definitely open up. But as of right now, the only 2 places I see him either having interest or wanting him in that I've really heard they really want is either Miami or Denver. And that's not just a homer thing. That's because I know Sean Payton loves having a duo of one player that's a do-it-all back, the Alvin Kamara type. That's Dalvin Cook to a T. Then the bruiser, like a Mark Ingram. Again, that's Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine to a T. They would be a perfect mesh together. That's why I say it. Plus, the Denver has the cash to make anything happen. I know people are going to talk about, oh, they only have so much cap space left. Last I checked, they had 12. They just signed Frank Clark to a $7.5 million guaranteed contract. So you subtract that, technically they got somewhere around $5 to $7 million, depending on what they've rolled over, what cash they have, etc. Can they make that work into something that Dalvin Cook would like? If they were able to work out a multi-year deal that's really incentive laden or and has a bunch of bonus in it, a bunch of upfront bonuses that they can spread out over the length of the contract, I definitely think they can. The biggest possibility is Miami. They have this cap space, they have the room, and that's his home. That's he grew up in Florida. That's where he cryptically sent out an Instagram post of him at the game they played in Miami, talking about it would be good to go home, yada yada yada. So it's obvious both the team and the player are interested in each other. Whether or not they're able to come to agreement, it's a whole different thing, and that's a really, really loaded running back group that Miami has between Mostert and Gaskin and all those other guys. So they definitely have to cut some guys, or maybe move them around, maybe even trade them, maybe get a couple of late round picks or something out of them to make room for Cook. But Cook would fit in really just about any offense. I don't see a bad fit for him. Um, I think Buffalo would be a good place. They really need a running back. They really need a running game to complement Josh Allen. I just don't know if they have the interest. Plus, with Stephon Diggs now wanting a bigger contract, I don't see them getting in on it. I think that would be his best landing place as far as contenders. Uh, Kansas City wouldn't be a terrible, even though it's coming from me. I would not want to see that, but it would make sense. He would give them a legit running game that would, I think, terrify any defensive coordinator. Having to go up against Patrick Mahomes and whoever it is he's throwing at with Travis Kelce, it doesn't matter who's out there besides Kelce. As long as he's got Kelce, he's good to go. He proved that last year, won an MVP without Tyreek and all them. So it doesn't really matter who Pat has on the outside as long as the inside's locked down with Travis Kelce. And if they were able to get a guy like Dalvin Cook, I I would hate to see how that offense ran with Dalvin Cook fully healthy and doing the things that he's able to do. So, where do I believe he ends up? I think he ends up in Miami. All signs point to that's where he wants to be, and as long as Miami wants him as much as he wants them, then I see him ending up. But it's also going to come down to who offers the most money. Obviously, at this point, he's not just going for nostalgia. He's not just going to go to a contender and take a pay cut. All signs point that he wants the best deal possible. So whoever that is, whether it's Denver, Miami, or some dark horse team, there's always that possibility. But to me, I just think all signs point to him ending up in Miami. DeAndre Hopkins, he's an interesting case. He's literally a mercenary. He's going to go wherever they offer the most money. That's not New England. Um, I would not be surprised to see him in Chicago. I think Chicago has been quite embarrassed with what little they've been able to do in free agency, especially on the offensive side. It seems like nobody believes in Justin Fields except the front office and Justin Fields and a modicum of Bears fans. I don't see how you look at Justin Fields and be like, yeah, that's our quarterback. That doesn't make any sense to me, but I digress. We won't go down that rabbit hole. We all know how I feel about Justin Fields, the running back, and we don't need to talk about him being a quarterback. So DeAndre Hopkins, I think his best bet at the biggest contract is in Chicago, and that's why, to me, that's where he ends up. I see him using all these other teams to drum up that number from Chicago, and that's where DeAndre Hopkins will eventually end up. Ezekiel Elliott, we will not know until training camp. He has been lowballed by every team in the league, and he has not accepted it. So he is going to take the tact of, I'm going to wait out, see what happens in training camp, see who gets desperate, and then he'll sign a contract. Plus, he's probably enjoying himself in Cabo. He's one of those guys. He don't want to be at mini camp. He doesn't want to be at any of these training camp practices any more than he absolutely has to be. So again, it would not surprise me if he waited until after training camp to sign with a team. I mean, he's a running back. It's, hey, hit this hole, hit that hole. Yes, that's oversimplifying things, but to get a running back on the field is probably the easiest position when it comes to football, is getting a guy acclimated to a team and getting him out on the field to where he can be successful takes the least amount of work. Again, it's still a lot of work. It's still got to be really good, but it takes the least amount of work when it comes to incorporating a player into an offense. So next up, let's go ahead and talk about trades possibilities. We mentioned a couple earlier. You got Josh Jacobs, who still hasn't signed his franchise tender. Then you have guys like Danielle Hunter, who's upset with his contract, the pass rusher from Minnesota, and Cordarrelle Patterson, who again wants a raise after being turned into a running back from just a pure returner, and going absolutely off for the Atlanta Falcons last year and the only bright spot of that offense. So he's looking to get paid. So there's people talking about him probably being traded because Atlanta's in the middle of a rebuild. And the last thing they want to do is give a big contract to a guy in his 30s. Again, that's a running back. Yes, he doesn't have the wear and tear. So he might have an extra couple of years, but he's still an over 30 guy that just got absolutely abused in that offense with so many touches, so many carries that it's got to put some wear and tear. I get why Cordero Patterson wants to get paid. Makes complete sense, bro. Cash in when the getting's good, but I don't see it coming from Atlanta. So, where are these guys going to end up? How likely are they to be traded? Josh Jacobs, I think it's probably somewhere in the 10 to 15% range that he gets traded. Very unlikely, but not impossible. Um, I think Raiders fans might revolt a bit if Josh McDaniels sits here and does what he did in Denver and tear apart a team that was just a few pieces away and creating an absolute abysmal roster. It's kind of looking like what he's starting to do there in Vegas. Getting rid of Derek Carr, now maybe getting rid of Josh Jacobs. Um, Devontae Adams is talking about, there's been chatter about him not being happy. Josh McDaniels is a cancer, and I'm all for him absolutely ravaging the Raiders. So please, Josh McDaniels, keep it up. I mean, he even shipped out Darren Waller and then went out and got Michael Mayer. Like, what are you doing? Makes no sense, but hey, again, I'm all for it. Keep doing a great job there, Joshy. um, but still, I don't see even him allowing Josh Jacobs out the door. Then you have Danielle Hunter. I think his chances are more 50-50. You just had Kevin O'Connell come out and talk about how him keeping Danielle is a legit possibility despite the trade rumors. So I think it's kind of went from more of like a 70-80% probability down to that 50-50. So you could see if somebody comes through and just blows the Vikings away with an offer, which I don't see happening for Danielle Hunter. He's a very good pass rusher, but I don't see him as a great pass rusher. I think Denver could put together a decent package for him, but I don't think they'd give the Vikings enough. So him being traded to somewhere like Denver that needs a pass rusher after the injuries to Baron Browning and the uneasiness that comes with having a Randy Gregory who just seems to get hurt every chance that he gets as well. You'd like to have that extra bit of depth, but they just got that with Frank Clark. So trying to bring in a Danielle Hunter and then giving him a contract he wants, not going to happen there. But again, that's another thing I could see Chicago doing, even though they would have to absolutely blow the doors off of the Minnesota Vikings for them to trade him within the division. They'd essentially have to make their cupboard bare, which would be a dumb move. So where he could go, I mean, the options are drying up at this point with Frank Clark being signed in Denver. So really, I think actually now that I'm talking about, I'm probably going to put that more of like a 30-70, with 30% being likely that Danielle Hunter gets traded. I just think the fact that he wants a new contract and that's going to hang up things. And so he's more than likely going to end up in Minnesota. Then you have Cordarrelle Patterson we just spoke of. That one I think is like 80% likely. I think they're going to sell high on Patterson, get as much draft capital back for him as they possibly can, and then unload him on another team that's going to have to give him a contract and probably overpay for him, probably misuse him, and he'll probably underperform for the entirety of that contract. But hey, this is how things go when you're playing Russian roulette with players in their lives. So last thing here, report indicates that Russell Wilson turned down legit offers from the Commanders and Eagles before choosing Denver. The reason I bring this up is because it was interesting to me to know that there had been talk about there were some other contenders that made a legit run at Russell, but we never really got information on who it was that could corroborate what was going on. Well, we finally do, and the fact that the Eagles were willing to put out more than what the Broncos, and the reports don't give the exact amount of draft capital that was in the works, but um, most people around have said that Jalen Hurts and multiple first rounders were in the deal for Russell Wilson. But Russ, not Seattle, Russ said no, because if you don't remember, Russell Wilson has a no trade clause. So he had to approve the deal. So he obviously did not like the Commanders for many, many reasons. We all know why, between Daniel Snyder and everything else that inept franchise has become since Dan Snyder bought them. Um, and then the Eagles. The Eagles was a little bit shocking to me because if you were looking at the two rosters at that point, the fact that Russell Wilson picked the Broncos over the Eagles, those two rosters, and he picked the Broncos, was a bit interesting to me because of the fact of the offensive line that the Eagles have and had. Their roster is absolutely stocked, including the offensive line. So after so many years of Russell Wilson talking about, I need offensive linemen, I need offensive linemen, I need offensive linemen, that he then picked the team with the worst offensive line out of all of them. Even Washington's offensive line is leaps and bounds beyond what the Broncos put out there at any point last season. And then you had all of those weapons that were in Philadelphia with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith and uh, Sanders and Dallas Goddard, and just the list goes on and on. And then that defense is just absolutely stacked from top to bottom. It makes me interested to know what was the thought process of Russ, because even Philly's a bigger market than Denver. It's really close to New York. So this is why I laughed when I was on Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover the other day, is when they were talking about whether or not Sierra would force Russell Wilson out of Denver like Lala did with Melo. And I laughed because this situation, he had a chance to go anywhere, including the New York Jets, which it, and so the fact that he would have turned down all these other big markets, even Philadelphia, even if New York Jets never gave them an offer, which I would highly doubt they didn't, but Philadelphia is right there. It's nothing but a train ride right over to New York. If she wanted a bigger market to force him into a bigger market, that would have been the perfect time. But she didn't. And so that's why I said never. I will take the over on how long it will take. It's never. She is never going to force him out. She is not the prima donna so many people try to make her out to be. And neither is Russ. Like, I get that people hate them. For whatever reason, they hate them. To each their own. But at this point, everything points to Russell Wilson being a great guy that chose Denver. Sierra helped him choose Denver over much bigger markets that would have given him just the same amount of money, that would have given him the same contract, and would have been able to help her career in a way that Denver can't. It's just being honest, it's a smaller market. All those things do come into effect. As much as I consternate about the Nuggets and Avs, et cetera, needing to get more pub, the proof in the pudding is with the Broncos. They get plenty of pub. They're plenty fun to talk about. Has nothing to do with the market on whether or not you can market a team. But when it comes to Sierra's career, it does matter. Um, so I just thought it was funny that the man had his pick of places to go. He chose Denver, and yet still everybody wants to try and consternate about why he chose Denver. He chose Denver because he liked the roster, he liked the setup, he liked the front office, all of those things. He liked the city, all of those. And if Sierra was ever going to force her way out of somewhere, wouldn't it be dreary, miserable, raining all the time Seattle? Like, if she hated a market, wouldn't it have been Seattle that she hated so much? So all that's funny. The fact that people want to try and make it out that Russ was something other, that he was just stuck in Denver, that he just didn't have any other options. Well, here you go. You're full of crap. Like we said, he had options, and now he's got the best option by having Coach Payton, a much better offensive line, and some other depth pieces that have been put in place that are going to sneakily improve this Denver roster in a way that people are not ready for. But what could have been? What could have happened if Russell Wilson ended up in Philly, ended up in Washington? Well, in Washington, I think it ends up worse. As hard as that is to believe, it ends up worse than what happened in Denver. If he ends up in Philly, you're talking about more than likely a Philadelphia Eagles win. As much as I love Jalen Hurts, as much as he was great in the Super Bowl, Russ has been there. Russ has won it. He knows what it takes, and he knows how to rally a team. I know people are going to bring up what happened in the last play against the New England Patriots. It wasn't his choice. He just ran the play. He ran the play that was called in the huddle. If y'all want to get mad at anybody, get mad at Pete Carroll. Like, I don't get why people are always dragging on Russ. Russ did everything. He read the play right. He made the right throw. Malcolm Butler just made a better play. Like, when are people going to give Malcolm Butler credit for making a great play? For watching film, recognizing something, and acting on it instead of trying to trash Russell Wilson for it. How about we give credit where credit is due? Malcolm Butler made a great play. Move on. Get over yourselves. Yeah. Oh, ridiculous. But anyways, let's see where we're at. All right. I guess we're going to go ahead and skip. I'm going to hold off on MLB All-Star voting till next time. We are at an hour, and I am sorry, y'all, again. I am dying in here. I have got to get out of this room. I got to get to some AC or something. I am sweating like crazy. If y'all don't see it, I don't know how. I got to be glistening. I swear I feel like I'm glowing. I already glow enough from being a ginger. It doesn't help with all this sweat. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Make sure y'all go all the socials down in the description. Like, subscribe, follow, all those good things. Hit all the red buttons and launch the nukes to clear the way so we can bring you the news the way that you deserve, which is to enrich you, not enrage you. So for E5280sports.com, sports and lifestyle, for the answer is 42, don't question the blue.